everybody that I know in the financial business, from the top to the bottom, particularly in the C-suite, thinks this thing is over. It's Mamdani's is going to win. That even if Curtis Lewa, who's been painted as the spoiler because he's taking 15% of the vote that would presumably go to Cuomo, the independent, even if he drops out, it shows that Mamdani's still like ahead, maybe in the margin of error in some places, but still ahead. And as you know, he beat Cuomo on a one-on-one in the Democratic for the Democratic nomination. So most of the CEOs, the Jamie Dimons of the world, the Brian Moynihan's, from what I understand, they all are resigned to Mamdani becoming mayor. Now, wouldn't you normally think they would be freaking out if a Maoist would become mayor? I mean, he's obviously said that he's going to, raise their taxes, raise the business tax, homelessness, free bus rides, which are going to become mobile homeless centers, shelters, if you know anything about the way this city works. Defund the police in various ways, maybe not per se defund, but in action defund, turning cops into social workers, things of that nature. Stuff that would lead to higher crime and maybe worse living conditions for their workers. And none of them are freaking out. As a matter of fact, they're reaching out to Mamdani, and it's not because they like him or trust him or think he's not going to do what he says he's going to do. The government-run grocery stores. It's mainly because they are saying, listen, this city and state have been moving in this direction for years. Andrew Cuomo, when he was governor, raised taxes. We already, I guess, a piece behind California. Here in New York, have the highest. Particularly if you live in the city, you have, the second highest, income tax levy from city and state in the country. We have lousy business conditions. And guess what? The banks have moved in many ways and will continue to move out of the city. Now, this was a number that I found interesting, but it's been written about. I should know this because I cover banks. I've been covering banks for 30 years. JP Morgan right now has more employees in Texas than it does in New York City. So JP Morgan, if you go through Midtown Manhattan, as you and I do all the time, has this gleaming, multi-story multi-billion, I think it's a $3 billion building in Midtown Manhattan. I believe it's on 40, I want to say 45th Street. I could be wrong, but it's right there. It's just like a magnificent place. And it is, it still has more employees in Texas right now. And Goldman,
but the high-paying ones are here.
Maybe, but increasingly they're moving them over there because there's a stock market in Dallas now, and there's lots of deals to be done in Texas and in the Midwest. Goldman has moved a lot of bankers to Utah. I think it's Provo, Utah. They have a very big hub out there. Bank of America's office, is in Texas. Goldman's in Texas. They're in Florida, obviously. So there's been an out migration in jobs. And I think the sort of basic feeling is that, these are, New York is yesterday's news. And we've been limiting our exposure to New York for a long, long time. And we're going to continue to do so. And so I think that's why you see Jamie Dimon actually has called Mamdani. This broke in the Times. I've gotten to confirm they had a brief, 3-minute conversation or something like that, where Jamie said, listen, I'm here for you if you need me. I hope he didn't mean I'm here for you if you need me to raise taxes of Bob Sloan and Charlie Gasparino. But he did say that,
We're both on the record. By the way, all this stuff that came out much later, we had nailed all these things. I was just, I watched the debate. And it's really disappointing.
Yeah.
Andrew Cuomo can't summon the energy. And he doesn't even look like he wants to be mayor of New York.
And
I'm excited about New York City. And it just doesn't come through.
And I'm disappointed in Curtis, who's a guy I've known for many years. I really like personally. I mean, when, during the first debate, when Mamdani corrected Curtis and how he said his name, I would have said, excuse me, I should be calling you Fidel because you do this, do that, do this, do that. And Larry Kudlow told me that he told Curtis to say that, call him Fidel. And he didn't. And I think at this point, you got to get you got to get really personal with this guy because he's personal with you, and he's not like somebody that average New Yorkers need in their lives right now, given all what's going on. And I think I understand the impetus of people saying Curtis should drop out because Cuomo is the lesser of two evils. But Andrew Cuomo has not like repented from what he did in his last couple of years as governor, and I don't mean nursing home deaths. He was not responsible for that. We can spend all day. I can unpack that for you. My brother's a doctor at, he runs Brooklyn Hospital. He'll
Why
tell you.
doesn't he unpack that, Charlie? I mean,
You want me to? Okay, I will.
yeah, no, we really should, because I think it's such a thing that during COVID, I just want to say it just briefly and let you do your thing. The way insurance works, no hospital wants people to die within their four walls. And the way funding works, no one wants that. And so,
Absolutely.
right? And so
Well, here's what happened during
what
COVID.
happened?
And during the dark days of COVID, and my brothers and he's a trauma specialist. He's certified in about 10 things, but trauma is his one of his main things. In addition to being the chairman of medicine at Brooklyn Hospital, he runs the ICU, which is kind of the heartbeat of the hospital. That's where the sickest of sickos, and that's where everybody during COVID went because people were really sick and no one knew
Right.
how to deal with them, particularly people with comorbidities. I mean, heavy set people with asthma, people with diabetes, something like that. If you had cancer, COVID really hit you hard because, you have a weakened immune system for a lot of reasons. Okay. Mostly healthy people get through it. Okay. It depends on the viral load. My brother got it just from treating people. He got a bad viral load. It was bad for 3 days, wicked fevers, hallucinations, the whole thing. But, 4 days later, he had his voice back. A week, I think 10 days later, he was back in the hospital. So, that said, he's in amazing shape. But here's what my brother told me about this whole thing about Cuomo sending people back from hospitals to nursing homes. The hospitals demanded the state do it.
Right.
The hospital said, we need these beds in the ICUs, which are being filled up with old people. And, after we clear them, so what happened was the hospitals would clear them the best they could. Remember, it wasn't perfect back then. The testing wasn't perfect. So they would think, okay, we got this like 80-year-old guy with a comorbidity. He had COVID. He's here. He's stabilized. We're going to send him home. He's past that 10-day period. Remember, it was that 10-day incubation period, and they would send him back. And and then there would be a COVID outbreak in the nursing home because these are old people with comorbid. I mean, when you get to be 80 years old, you do get stuff.
Right.
Even if you're healthy. You got other things. You might have high blood pressure. I mean, who knows? You might have stage 1 cancer. I mean, you don't know. That does happen to 80-year-old people, even though and by the way, they don't die, no, naturally for another 15 years. It just
Right.
happens. But when you get COVID, your immune system is compromised. It hurts you. So Cuomo sent them back on the sort of demands of the hospital system.
Right.
Then it becomes an issue of, it came to the issue of how they were classifying those deaths and whether Cuomo hid the nursing home deaths by saying they were hospital deaths. So apparently, it's not his call to really say they were one or the other. It is literally a function of the way Medicare and Medicaid and these various social programs involving health insurance work. So if you come from a nursing home and you from the hospital and you die in the nursing home, sometimes I think the whole thing was like he said they weren't nursing home deaths. He said they were hospital deaths, right?
Right.
Because that's how you're supposed to classify them because they came from the hospital. So theoretically, you got sick in the hospital, and then it's all. That's why this was not Cuomo fudging the books.
Right.
In terms of his sexual harassment stuff, let's be real clear here. Go through the allegations. A lot of them were preposterous. Well, he looked at me a certain way. Well, he kissed me on the cheek. This is after you and I. This was before he and this woman took like a picture where they were hugging each other out. This was like crazy stuff in the
Why
context.
doesn't he just say what you're saying and just say it and just say,
Yeah, I don't know. I
understand the
don't
health
know.
system. If you understand the health system, this is what happened.
I understand, but just so you
Politics,
know,
it's dirty game, blah, blah, blah.
I've
I can
said
say
that to
it.
his people, and they say we have said it, just doesn't catch
He
on.
doesn't.
I think well, maybe they're not saying it right, but I think it's so unfair that he gets nailed for that. Where I have a problem with him is he raised taxes at the end, did police reform, like bail reform, gave
Right.
in to the left on a lot of things. He should have allowed fracking, and he never said, "I'm sorry, I kind of went too far left. I was trying to appease the left, and I'm not going to ever do that again. I'm a moderate, and here's my bona fides." I think if he said that, he would have been run a much more effective campaign. And now what he's left with, I think, in these last days, and the reason why most people are resigned to Mamdani winning is I'm just not the commie Mamdani. And I just don't think it'll work. Even if Curtis, who's under tremendous pressure by everybody, by my newspaper, by his own boss, John Katzmatidis, a man that I greatly admire. He's a friend of mine. He wants Curtis to drop, and he's trying to do it in a very elegant and classy way. And if you read the headlines, Curtis quit ABC because he was on the air, said he'll never do it again. He feels like he's being betrayed. I understand why they're doing this, but remember, you know, the alternative is somebody that just hasn't fessed up for what he's done wrong, and it's not the nursing home, and it's not stuff, and it's not the alleged, all that ridiculous sex harassment stuff. Which, by the way, he's never was convicted of a crime. The person that brought the case against him, the state report, was maybe the most conflicted and I would say, corrupt prosecutors in the country. Someone named Tish James, the New York State Attorney General, who literally ran on prosecuting Donald Trump even before she had the evidence. And that's why it's my opinion she's corrupt. And then she went out and found the evidence, right? What was it? What was that thing from one of Stalin's henchmen? The guy.
Area.
What's that? Beria. What do you say?
Area.
Find me the person, I'll get the
I
crime.
got find me a person, I get the crime.
I
Exactly.
mean, it was just, and she did that. And then, there's been no criminal. It was referred criminally, and no one brought a case for obvious reasons. So his problems are different, and he hasn't been able to articulate, I think, a mid ground that would separate him out and say, and then would prove to Curtis voters, like, your guy ain't going to do this. I'm going to do this. And so we can kind of have a real race. So that's why I think Wall Street is resigned to a Mamdani mayoralty.